What was your reaction when you either saw the footage in Parliament or read the reports that the Home Office was dropping plans for these 5 independent investigations?
I was amazed, but can I say not surprised, having spent so many years in that field, because the detectives, the social workers, everybody working in this area get let down.
Yeah.
You know, there's quite a lot of power that the people actually at the coalface have. And you look at even the recommendations that came out from Alexis J. I looked at those and thought, well, they're in place. You've actually got the people doing the work. What you don't have is the support coming down from on top.
Yeah.
Because there's been a lot of people, has to be said, over the years, who've actually probably done a few little things in these areas that they wish they hadn't done, and they can be quite easily found out. So perhaps not surprised, but very, very, very much let down for the victims.
In terms of, I mean, we're going to talk to the MP who's the Tory frontbencher who was speaking in Parliament. Some very powerful words, and you know, we haven't been able to play everything she said because we have to beep things because the language, she's quoting some court reports about the attitudes of some of these abusers. But one of the things that she talked about is how often the authorities, including the police, were aware of what was going on. She mentioned at one point, she said, talked about the case of Anna from Bradford, who was in residential care at the age of 14, clearly a vulnerable girl. She said she made repeated reports of her rape and abuse to her social workers who were responsible for her. So again, wasn't that no one was told? And again, we know about all these cases of the years. They tell their social workers, they tell people in position of trust. The following year, age 15, she married the man who was her abuser, far older than her. She married him in a traditional Islamic wedding ceremony. And far from stepping in to stop it, her social worker was a guest at the wedding. Again, we already knew this, but it's shocking. It's still. The authorities then arranged for her to be fostered by her abuser's parents. The ringleader of the Rochdale rape gang was then employed as a welfare rights officer by Oldham Council. I mean, institutionalised rape to all intents and purposes. She's also talked about how the father of an abuse victim, and we heard about him before in Rotherham, he was arrested twice in one night by South Yorkshire Police when he attempted to rescue his daughter because she was being abused, gang raped in a house, and he tried to rescue her, and it was him that ended up being arrested. And that extraordinarily, on 3 occasions by the police, that the man, the paedophile, you know, was the grooming gang leader, was seen with this young girl, you know, and by the police with her, and the police did nothing. What happens in those scenarios if a police officer sees something or is made aware of a crime, when nothing comes of it? What happens behind the scenes for that to happen?
You've got an array of things there, and I go back to the investigations that I carried out, and obviously I try to put myself in those positions.
Yeah.
And when you've got a victim, what that victim wants straight away wants to be heard.
Yeah.
It's not a question of being. I took away. I used to say to my colleagues, don't sort of stand there and say they don't want to be, but they want to be heard. Listen to what they're saying first of all.
Yeah.
Now, what you have in this situation, because I mean, I dealt with 15 years worth of investigations, and I then went into the online world of grooming. What was happening here? If I say the early days, Julia, it was a lot of people who said, well, this is too unbelievable to happen. This is a bit like the Jim Savile situation. Yeah. That there's no way this can be happening in Ira. No, it must be because she's a detention seeker, the victim's an attention seeker, and all this sort of thing. Now, I can honestly say all the people I work with, we never sort of went through this, but of course they've gone through. These might be smaller forces. They didn't have the same sort of training. Certain names would have come up. Some of these people, even the company directors of these taxi companies, that they were named, oh, hang on a minute, they're high. Not only in politics, but in their local surroundings.
Because a lot of it was mini cab offices, and it was local kebab shop owners, things like that. That's how they were sort of getting these girls and ferrying them around. Yeah. Yeah,
and what you've got a situation is where these victims come forward. They're young girls. They're probably known to the police in the sense of runaways. They're probably known there's an element of vulnerability.
They're troubled. They're drinking. Yeah. They're on drugs. Yeah.
And then you've got the situation that these officers, and you've got obviously social services, social workers, they then worry, even in those days, of being called racist. Oh no, you can't say that. So you do have that. And then when you bring up to date, you think to yourself, wow, we've got 45 to 50 cities in the UK where there are hundreds of victims who go back over these years and say, this happened to me.
Yeah.
So what you've just said, Julie, is quite correct. What you know and I know and the public know, there has been cover-ups. Now, that's a strong word to use, but there have been cover-ups. This even includes the likes of Keir Starmer when he was part of the CPS in the early 2000s, rather. So you've actually got a situation where no wonder the powers that be don't want a public inquiry, because people are going to have to swear on oath to say this. Now, I can guarantee it won't just be people like me or people like Maggie Oliver who are happy to stand up and say, well, that happened. I could tell you it happened. I was under pressure not to do anything as a detective, and I know that that's what's going to happen. And, you know, you can think, well, is there any government that wants that to happen? So when it came to this, one thing that struck me, Julia, was when I watched Jess Phillips talk, she read everything.
The Home Office Minister yesterday, who's supposed to be there for safeguarding, for victims, safeguarding women, it was shocking.
I just got the feeling what she was actually reading, she was ashamed. If you watch the video of it, and I think that her as a person, she's thinking, I've done so many promises here, I'm letting people down.
She should have refused to do it then, shouldn't she? Because otherwise, what's the point? There'll be that view that people go, well, it's still better that I'm in government and not someone else. Well, no, the point is you're in government because of that campaign you've done. And if at the point when it's your career or that the safety of those girls, you choose your career, that tells us something.
And what worries me now, I mean, I'm out of law enforcement now. What worries me now, it's still going on. You've still got individuals who are blind-eyed. Now we've got this word being cancelled because obviously social media. I mean, 25, 30 years ago, we didn't have the social media. Now you've got it. And so you're going to end up with a lot of people making these decisions because they're so worried about their own future. And it's such a worry.
Well, exactly. And we saw it again. You say you go back to Jimmy Savile and the like. And I understand again, right, early on, but then once it became aware, everyone was going, well, hold on a minute. And MPs were talking about it in Parliament quite a long time ago. And then they were basically being told, shut up or your career's over. But they were campaigning as much as they could. When you as a police officer or a social worker or someone at a local council and they're concerned about this, and again, we've spoken to Maggie Oliver many, many times, who basically had to quit Greater Manchester Police to campaign on this issue, a magnificent woman. But when you're under pressure to kind of just, you know, shut up, Jonathan, shut up, Maggie, can you just make this go away? Or is it explicit? Is it someone calling you in their uniform and going, right, I need you to go away and forget this ever happened because I've got councillor blogs over here worried about losing funding from this particular community or votes or whatever it is. Is it explicit or is it just you get a feeling, or just how explicit is it?
It depends on the weight of evidence. Let's say so. So obviously the last bit you said is just a feeling. So there's nothing there. You know, nowadays we've got the CPS sort of involved. You've got to get permission. But if you go back to what your point there about in smaller forces, without a doubt, because you've got this expression, you know, you've got the constable, the sergeant, the inspector, chief inspector, then up to superintendent. A superintendent in many of the smaller forces is like God. You know, and something like, for me, the Metropolitan Police, there where the superintendent was quite far more proactive in many ways. So my investigations, thankfully for me, the investigations I carried out, we were like a family. We all supported each other. I felt for a lot of these young, smaller forces and these smaller offices, whereby they would go to somebody with no experience at all, and may well be. I mean, I'm going to throw this in, which people might not like. What do you remember, Julie? Don't go back 20, 25 years. All those issues about the Masonic Lodge. Because you've got this will come into it. And of course, in certain county forces, this is what you know, there would have been pressure. So I think, without a doubt, the constable who would have been young in service would have probably taken the report, taken the allegation, gone in and said, no, that hasn't happened. Don't worry, no crime it, or just say no further police action.
Move along.
And it's far too easy to do.
That's the thing. And again, people don't want that to come out. Really good to talk to you, get that background. Jonathan Taylor, was a former detective, spent 15 years investigating child abuse.